We're not stupid anymore. We're sick of these people promising things that they're never gonna deliver on. And Kamala Harris is now rolling out Lizzo.
Kamala Harris needs to be talking to people who are skipping meals in order to make it. She needs to be talking less about Donald Trump. That's why he's eating her alive.
Joe sees what an embarrassment Kamala Harris is. You can watch his podcast. He talks a lot about her and how embarrassing she is.
On her pricing policy, of which I have many investments. What the hell is she talking about? I got to call Cuban for the answer. Maybe he should be the president.
I do know better, and I will tell you. The contrived issue that almost no one cares about in every single opinion.
Wow. You see, I think that's incredibly deluded.
Donald Trump has already been in office as well. If he was gonna be a fascist, if he was gonna take over the country, he's gonna be a dictator, he's gonna be Hitler, then he'd already been Hitler.
The October surprise in the 2024 presidential race may simply be there is no surprise because nothing can surprise us anymore. This week, John Kelly, a White House chief of staff under Donald Trump, claimed the former president is a fascist.
Well, I'm looking at the definition of fascism. It's a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy. So certainly, in my experience, those are the kind of things that he thinks would work better in terms of running America.
Well, Kamala Harris addressed that in an extraordinary statement.
It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans. All of this is further evidence for the American people of who Donald Trump really is. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room.
And in bygone years, that kind of intervention might well have met the criteria for a seismic October news event with the power to move a needle in a dead heat. But not anymore. Trump has taken so much incoming fire, in some cases quite literally. He's starting to look a bit like Superman. Bullets are rebounding off his chest like ping pong balls, and that's because the market for shocking claims about Donald Trump is pretty saturated. Once you've been called the new Hitler again and again, well, the rest kind of doesn't touch the sides. It's all been overfed and overstuffed like a prime goose. There's almost nothing that could be said about him that most voters now will find even remotely surprising or shocking. The Democrats seem to move away from the dictatorship and democracy narrative in the wake of the Butler shooting, but now it's back with venom, and President Joe Biden's entered the race for this year's hypocritical Black Pot Award.
Bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We gotta lock him up. Politically lock him up.
Politically, he said, desperately, when he realised what he'd said. He didn't mean that, though, did he? He meant literally. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is still struggling to distance herself from Biden's disrepute and from the coup that unseated him.
You never saw anything like what happened at the debate night behind closed doors with him?
It was a bad debate. People have bad debates. He is absolutely...
But that's the reason why you're here, and he's not running for the top of the ticket.
Well, you'd have to ask him if that's the only reason why.
What do you think?
I am running for president of the United States.
Embarrassing. I compare that squirming awkwardness with the way Donald Trump answers questions. In this clip, he slams Harris for taking a day off to prepare for that very NBC interview.
And I was going to hit her really hard on the trail today, but now I don't have to because she's off. She's off. No, I can't get over it. Who the hell takes off? You have 14 days left. And she'll take a couple of more days off, too. You know why? She's lazy as hell, and she's got that reputation. She's a radical left lunatic. She's further left than Bernie Sanders or Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas, because I think...
It's very liberating to be able to say exactly what you're thinking, as Trump does 24/7. Believe me, I know that feeling. Donald Trump's appearance on Joe Rogan now appears to be confirmed for Friday. I think it'll be riveting. He can sit and talk freely for hours without any fear that he'll offend donors, voters, friends, or advertisers. That's why Joe Rogan is the #1 podcaster in the world. Can Kamala Harris really do the same? If she follows Trump now onto the biggest podcast in the world, as some reports suggest she will, that'll be the biggest surprise in October for me. Well, to debate all this, I'm joined by the chairman of O'Leary Ventures and Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, Brandon Tatum, host of the Officer Tatum, Marianne Williamson, who challenged Biden and Harris for the Democrat nomination, and the host of the David Pakman show, David Pakman. Well, welcome to all of you. Kevin O'Leary, I'm just getting a feeling like I had in 2016 that this is Trump's to lose now. What's your feeling telling you?
Well, you know, and I get this data pretty well every morning. There's 43 counties in 7 states. 45% of the population hates Trump, and 45% of the population loves Trump. And so we're down to this 10% that's floating. And that's why you're seeing these candidates go to these counties. At least they were very intensely last week, and I expect they will this week as well. My guess is this is going to be an extraordinary election outcome because it may be decided by less than 10,000 votes. And so, you know, it's very hard to, you know, there's a lot of media attention around momentum each side each week, and Kamala's having a bad week right now, according to media. But that's not what the polls are telling me. The polls are telling me within the margin of error of 1.7 to 3.2%, you can't bet, and I'm in the business of betting. If I knew with certainty Trump was going to win, I would be going long energy right now at 6 and 7p stocks. I'd be putting a huge amount of money into U.S. energy stocks, and I can't get any of my fellow investors to go with me there yet. We simply don't know.
Yeah, Marianne Williamson, it is incredibly tight, and there are obviously bigger picture questions about why American elections now come down to literally a few thousand votes in a few counties and a few swing states. It does seem absurd for a nation as big and powerful as America that this keeps happening. But we are where we are with this one. How are you reading the election at the moment?
Well, obviously for Democrats, it's way too close for comfort. And there should be a sign to the Harris administration to do something different in these next 2 weeks. What they need to do different in the next 2 weeks is to stop talking so much about Donald Trump. They seem more obsessed with Donald Trump than they seem obsessed with gaining power in order to improve the lives of the average American. They need to be talking to the average American, not about Donald Trump. People know who he is. They have their opinions about who he is. And many people who know who he is are going to vote for him anyway because they feel that that's how their lives will be improved. Kamala Harris needs to be talking to American people about the fact that over half our bankruptcies are medical bankruptcies, about medical insurance and how many are underinsured. She needs to be talking to people who are selling their blood plasma or skipping meals in order to make it. She needs to be talking to people about the fact that they can't live on just one job, the things that she's going to do to make things better, talking to them about their lives and talking less about Donald Trump. That's why he's eating her alive in certain ways, and they have got to make a fundamental change over the next 2 weeks if they want to win.
Kamala Harris is at the vice president's residence, and she's making another address about Donald Trump, and she's invoking the whole Hitler narrative because of what General Kelly said about Trump being fascist and him talking about Hitler's generals being loyal and so on. And I think it's such a ridiculous act of self-harm to constantly compare, well, A, to constantly talk only about your opponent, as you say, but also to keep comparing him to the most genocidal monster that the modern world has ever seen. Because even if you hate Trump with a passion, he's not Adolf Hitler. So most people in the middle who are not tribally attached to one side of the go, well, he's not Hitler and they're not the Nazis. So if you're going to call him this all the time, it puts me off.
Well, I personally don't think that the comparison to fascism is illegitimate at all. My problem is the fact that John Kelly, every day he remained in the White House, legitimized the Trump presidency. The time to talk about all this was years ago, literally. And the fact that they didn't sound the alarm when they should have, I believe, is what's making it now kind of like, oh, he's not Hitler. He was president before. We survived. Our democracy survived. And once again, like you're saying, it's not working. Stop talking about Trump, talk about voters and what they need and the America that we could create, that the Democratic Party should stand for over the next 4 years. That's what she should be hammering every single hour of every single day over the next 2 weeks.
Right, but Brandon Tatum, here's the problem. I don't think she knows how to articulate what her vision for America is. Every time I've seen any long more substantive interview with her where she's asked about what she really has planned to run the country, she just falls apart. I mean, I'm nothing against her. I met her once. She's perfectly nice. She's obviously intelligent, done very well with herself, excellent in the Senate and so on and so on. But at some point, if you're going to run the United States of America, the leader of the free world, you've got to articulate actually what you're going to do. And she just cannot do that in a way that, to me, is resonating at all. Hence the constant pivoting to Trump bashing. Because on that, they're on safer ground, they think.
Well, Piers, I'll tell you this. A wise man has said, you can never trust a person that promises you something that they're going to do tomorrow that they could have done yesterday. These people have been in office and they've been feckless. Donald Trump has already been in office as well. If he was going to be a fascist, if he was going to take over the country, he's going to be a dictator, he's going to be Hitler, then he'd already been Hitler. So you could believe them for what their track record has shown. And I think Donald Trump actually has a plan for the people. And I think it's genuine. That's why he's connecting. He's not connecting because he's so brilliant. He's an older man. He's slowing down. He's connected because he genuinely believes it. Not Hillary Clinton, but Kamala Harris is not connected because they don't really care. I do not believe they care about the middle class people. I don't think they really care about the individuals who are struggling or suffering and things that they could actually address. They do not have a plan for you. And I wish that America would wake up. The only reason that they're polling close to Donald Trump is because of propaganda. Major news outlets are just pumping lies. I see them every day. Lies about abortion, lies about Trump sending the military against the American people. I mean, it's just straight lies that they're pushing. That's the only reason they're close.
Okay, I saw you laughing there, David. Here's what I would say before I let you respond. The reaction to Trump going to McDonald's was fascinating to watch from here across the pond. Because I can't think of a smarter stunt, frankly, given all the furore over whether Kamala ever did actually work at McDonald's. And honestly, from everything I've read, I don't think she did, because absolutely no one can remember her ever being there. But putting that to one side, he goes there and he does this stunt. But it's, McDonald's is such an iconic piece of Americana. It's the kind of all-inclusive place where everyone can afford to go there. Pretty much anyone could end up running a franchise if you work hard enough and you get a bit of luck and a fair wind behind you. And there he is in his hatch, having fries and fries, handing out packages. And yet all I saw from the left was a lot of scorn and mockery, as if somehow him doing this was something to be laughed at. I did not see it that way. I thought this was really smart politics by Trump. And actually what the Democrats should have done was just very quickly move on and find something better to talk about, rather than looking like they think this is somehow all rather demeaning, because that's not how regular Americans would have seen it. Discuss.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I spoke about this 5 minutes on Monday and I've moved on. So I agree with you. I mean, I'm only talking about it now because you brought it up. I don't think it was as brilliant as maybe you're suggesting. That they closed down a store and hurt that store financially on that day in terms of sales. And Trump at the end of the day saw it as something to help him. If he had gone there, well, hold on a second. I'm one sentence in. If he had gone there and said, I put on the apron, I did the fry-o-later, and now I recognize that a $7.25 minimum wage, which has been the same almost 20 years, isn't going to cut it. That would have been really interesting and shown he cares about someone other than himself. Instead, it was about rehearsed drive-through and wearing the apron and pretending
David,
to know what's going on.
I'm going to jump in.
It's Kamala Harris who said, I support a $15 an hour minimum wage.
David, are you familiar with the phrase clutching at straws? I hope that
I'm sorry, you glitched. What's the phrase?
Does the phrase clutching at straws cross the pond in a way that you understand?
Piers, you brought this topic up.
What I'm saying is, you saying the only way it could work would be if Trump banged on about the minimum wage. You're missing the point. I mean, I'll bring back Kevin here, because you're a business guy, you're an entrepreneur. Just as a pure bit of political theatre, I thought he was genius. Utter genius. Honestly, I did.
I mean, most of this material is seen in 15, 30, 45-second visual bites. And I think for him, it worked. I mean, yeah, people are talking about the fact that Secret Service had to check out the people in the car that took the bag. But I don't think the majority of people that watch that on TikTok or Instagram give a damn. And I think these things are viral for about 30 hours. My team monitors all this stuff because we're involved in the same kind of social media for many companies. And it really worked. It got a tremendous amount of views. And so it's already burned off and we're on to the next thing. But Trump has become masterful at mastering the art of holding on to viral videos for longer than almost anybody else. And some of the things he says are outrageous, and people have known him now for close to 9 years. And if you hate him, you hate him. It just doesn't matter at this point. You know, I have the same divide in my own family. I mean, I got a family cut in half. I have to listen to this stuff every night at dinner as one side blasts the other. But that is the American kitchen table today. And I would say one thing about this that people should start considering, because the outcome, as we've been discussing, is unknown, but we're just literally days away. I think the takeaway from this election that is going to be looked at for a long time if the Democrats lose, and the history that will be made, is circumventing the democratic system by actually not allowing the democracy to choose the next leader after Biden was stepped aside or was pushed aside, whatever you want to call it. Would be a huge mistake if she loses, because she was not a successful candidate in 2019. She was not a successful candidate in 2020. And if she's not a successful candidate now, it'll be because the same reason that 88% of investment advisors can't beat the S&P 500, Obama can't beat the index that is made by his own democracy, his own Democratic convention. He picked her. Maybe Hillary Clinton picked her. Maybe some movie stars picked her. We simply don't know. She was anointed, and if she fails, it's their fault. Yeah. And they're going to own it. And it happened to Hillary Clinton, too. I remember I was there in Pittsburgh when she was anointed, and Bruce Springsteen sat on the stage and sang about, boy, it's going to be great while she's president. And she got smoked. Yeah. And that she was also an anointment. So I think that's got to stop. They got to stop trying to pick stocks and let the actual party decide. Yeah.
I mean, Marianne, just hold fire for a moment. I want to bring in another guest just briefly. This is Bo Loudon, who's described by Vanity Fair this week as Barron Trump's best friend and the driving force behind Donald Trump's podcast offensive. Well, Bo, great to have you on Uncensored. I've got to say, I've been very, very struck by the sheer volume of very different kind of media stuff that Trump's been doing, culminating, of course, in the big one, which is Joe Rogan on Friday, but doing lots of other interesting ones, some that wouldn't be that well known, perhaps, to people who are not in that podcast community and so on. And you're apparently one of the driving forces behind this. So what's the strategy?
Well, I think the strategy is reaching an audience that you know, maybe isn't being recognized, or an audience that loves Trump and they're just not being acknowledged. And of course, it's funny because, you know, every time Trump does something, Kamala Harris follows right along and tries to do the same thing. I'm sure she'll try to go on Joe Rogan. Of course, Joe Rogan obviously picked President Trump before he picked her. So, you know, that was great. And I would like to say that I hope I helped set that up too. I definitely talked to some people about that. But I think it's great, and I think it's reaching those audiences that aren't being reached, and a whole generation that, you know, is tired of being kicked around, tired of being told that we're stupid by Kamala Harris, and you know, tired of just sitting there feeling we don't have a president that cares about us. You know, we want to be able to afford groceries. We want to be able to buy our first houses. You know, so I think it's great, and I think that's why Trump's doing this type of things. And as you can see, when he does them, it blows up on the internet, and everyone's talking about it, you know, left or right, because it's very interesting, and it's something that no other president has done in history. And you know, he's known for these kind of things. He's known for being the first of everything. So,
yeah, it is interesting, because I've known him a long time and I've had long conversations with him. What's interesting to me is the format of these longer form podcasts really suits it, because actually in that environment he relaxes, he can be very funny, very entertaining, he can be very charming. We didn't see a lot of that in his run in 2016 or his tenure in office, because he preferred to be the kind of big tough commander-in-chief, and also because the format of the media he did is a bit more wham bam than he's now doing. I think it plays to his strengths, which a lot of people who don't like him won't want to see. But I've always said, look, he has a very charming, funny side to him, and these podcasts are definitely bringing that out.
Yep, 100%, and that's why, you know, he's up 11 points among Latino voters. He's up another two points among Arab voters. He's dominating in the polls, and the press and everybody likes it. And Kamala Harris and her whole campaign is sweating in their boots trying to find out what interviews they can get on. But then she just goes on Brett Barron, completely embarrasses herself. So I'd love to see both Kamala and President Trump come on your show as well and talk to you. And we know you'd hit them with some hard balls, and it'd be easy because Trump would pass them off. He knows how to take hard questions. Yeah. He knows how to answer them. He knows how to defend himself on national television. Unlike Kamala Harris, who goes and sits there and she can't tell you what an ROI is. Like, she knows. It's very embarrassing.
Well, in fact, he did promise me last week he would do another interview with me. So if you're the driving force behind the podcast machinery, Bo, I expect you to put a good word in after this very interview.
We'll do. I got you, Piers.
Donald Trump Uncensored. I mean, who wouldn't want to hear that? Talk to me just quickly about Barron Trump. Don't know much about Barron. I've met him a few times when I was doing The Apprentice, actually. You're good mates of his. It can't be easy having been Barron the last few years. But how influential has he been, do you think, in his dad's ear with some of this stuff? Because I'd imagine, rather like my sons, who are all in their 20s, they listen to all this stuff all the time.
Yeah, I think he's definitely playing a hand. And that's because, unlike the media will tell you, President Trump is very close with his children. They all love him. He calls them regularly.
No question.
I'll be on the phone with someone, and he'll be 5 minutes before he goes on stage to speak, and he's calling his kids, asking how they're doing, asking if they're watching. So he is very close with his kids, and I think Barron, he's in my age group. He knows who's popular at this time. He knows so when he talks to his dad and he tells him, hey, I think you should go on with this guy. I think it'd be really great. His dad listens, and he's able to play a hand in that too. And he's very smart. He knows his history. He knows his politics. He's very educated, very, very well-mannered, very well-raised kid. He's a good kid for sure. So
well, tell him.
he's
I
working at college now, and he's doing his.
Tell Barron, I remember him when I was doing The Apprentice back in 2008, and I was very nice to him then. Time for him to return the favour. I need the Bo and Barron double header to get him on. And I would love to do Kamala Harris too, by the way. I think it'd be great. On relation to Joe Rogan.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Joe Rogan is due to take place on Friday, and I imagine will air pretty soon after that. That's the big one. Joe Rogan, I mean, we've got a clip here I want to play you just because it's funny. But this is Joe Rogan saying you'd never have Trump on. Take a listen.
By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
I mean, that's an interesting perspective because he's now having him on, and it will help Donald Trump. What do you think's changed?
Well, maybe his numbers are dropping a bit, Maybe he needs some of that clout. He sees that Trump is going on all these other shows, and they're gaining millions of followers just for having him on. And it's the biggest episode they've ever done. He has the record for the #1 stream of all time when he did it with Aiden Ross. So I think maybe Joe's like, I want some of this clout. And also I think Joe sees what an embarrassment Kamala Harris is. You can watch his podcast. He talks a lot about her and how embarrassing she is. I didn't think we could get someone, that was more mentally handicapped than Joe Biden that can't put a sentence together. But boy, I was wrong. So it's really embarrassing. And I think Joe gets that. And I think that's why he wants to have President Trump on now, because he understands, it's good. And I hope he gives Trump some hard balls, and I hope it's good. But I think it'll be a very great interview. And you know what? I do hope he has Kamala Harris on too, because that will also be very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. They should all do it. Bo, hang with us. We're just going to keep you on the panel for a bit. I want to go to Marianne. It is very interesting, Marianne. I think Trump's strategy with the media this time round compared to the last 2 times that he's run. Very different, much younger, many more of these podcasts. I think it's really effective. And it may not be obvious to people, particularly if they're just lassoed to mainstream media. But as someone whose own sons in their 20s consume a lot of this stuff, this is a big deal. When Trump does things like Joe Rogan, it's going to be massive and potentially a big vote winner for him.
Absolutely. He's going after his base. And Kamala Harris should be going after her base. She's making many people in her base feel like they don't matter. When you're out there talking more with Liz Cheney than talking to people who, are thinking about the progressive issues that have been so important and core to the Democratic electorate, they're talking already about the problem that they could have with Jill Stein, just like they had in 2016. And yet they are ignoring the concerns of the people who just might vote for Jill Stein, almost acting as though they're embarrassed because they're always reacting to Donald Trump. Donald Trump says that she's left of Pocahontas. The Democrats should be running on that. Well, we don't know what Pocahontas's politics are, but we believe in this or we believe in that. There are too many people now, even what they're talking about with their Black agenda, their Latina agenda, it comes across patronizing. It comes across almost condescending. Why aren't they talking about criminal justice? Why aren't they talking about mass incarceration, the numbers of Black men and Latino men who are filling up America's jails? Donald Trump is talking to people who could vote for him, who feel passionately about the issues that he is talking about. People will go for false hope before they'll go for no hope. Kamala needs to get out there and talk to her base, not just to people who might be disaffected Republicans.
I think you're so right. Brandon, I do think this is right. I think the problem for Kamala Harris is she got parachuted in to this gig, coronated, in a weird way, where I thought it would have helped the Democrats a lot more if they'd had a proper brokered convention where other people threw their hat in the ring and they juked it out. It would have toughened her up, perhaps, for the battle against Trump. What do you think about that? You think they should have allowed others to maybe get involved in a race against her to replace Biden?
Yeah, Pierce, 100%. First of all, she shouldn't have been an affirmative action hire the first time. They should have gotten a qualified Black woman that was very successful, very intelligent, that can add value to the presidency when Joe Biden chose his running mate. They didn't. They just picked a Black woman. And I think they picked the wrong one. And then you go down the list and say, okay, now that Joe Biden dropped out in the 11th hour, they just put her in there. She's incredibly unpopular. She's incredibly unintelligent. This woman is a terrible candidate. She laughs and she cannot articulate a clear sentence about her policy positions. And then she gets on the campaign trail and runs on, I'm a woman. I'm going to do this for Black people. Ma'am, you have never done anything for Black people, and you're not a clear representation of a good quality woman. And we can go over her history, but I'll save that for another time. But these people are patronizing young Black men. Obama comes out and says, well, y'all are against women. That's why you don't want to. No, we're not stupid anymore. We're sick of these people promising things that they're never going to deliver on. And Kamala Harris, at the 11th hour, is now rolling out Lizzo. Big Lizzo got on a private jet cussing and swearing, and her lyrics are degenerate. You got Eminem is degenerate. You have all of these celebrities. Those are not the average everyday person. These celebrities are not worrying about what they're going to eat in healthcare. They're extremely wealthy, and they're not connecting with the people. And that's why Donald Trump is kicking her butt. And if it wasn't for lies and deception and coercion by the media and all of that, Donald Trump will be winning by 20 points right now.
Right, but the truth is he's not, and it is very, very close. If we bring you out David here. David, the thing is, I want to play a clip from MSNBC. Obviously, you hate Trump with a pathological violence. But they went out and spoke to people in the street, and this happened.
Trump talks about this a lot. He says, Kamala Harris became Black when it was convenient.
Right. Yeah.
Can you talk to me about, do you agree with him on that? Do you feel like she's wearing her Blackness?
Absolutely. when she's sworn into the Senate, it was as the first Indian American.
Thank you.
Which is, it's fine. We don't care.
We all know she's not Black. Let's understand that. We are all clear of that. But my point of view, like I told you earlier, she's already been there. She's in office right now.
I mean, David, that's pretty devastating when you hear that for Kamala Harris, isn't it? They all think she's a bit of a phony who's basically using them as a community.
Those two people did say that, but if you look at any public opinion survey, this is not ranking anywhere. And there still seems to be confusion about the concept of being biracial. But no, I don't think that's really devastating at all. And in fact, I think that, I don't know what interviews Brandon's been watching, but she just did an interview yesterday with NBC where she was almost goaded by the interviewer. Why aren't you talking about being a woman and being Black? And she said, people can tell what my identity is. I'm running on policy, and then people can judge the identity however they want. She's stepped away from identity politics, which I think is fantastic, by the way.
David, let me ask you this.
Politics as a cudgel.
David, let me ask you this. One of the things she stands for, along with Joe Biden, is she has done nothing while they've been in office to stem this, in my view, horrendously unfair situation of trans athletes competing in women's sport. And an astonishing survey has just come out today by the United Nations that reveals that female athletes have lost 900 medals to transgender rivals competing against them in women's sporting categories. This is a UN report. That's 600 female athletes in more than 400 competitions have lost nearly 900 medals in 29 different sports. When the average American sees that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris now support this unfairness, and that's what it is. It's just unfair. It's nothing to do with being transphobic or anything else. It's just unfair. And when it's supported by a report like that from the UN, that's one of her problems too, is that people think they're supporting the indefensible. They lack basic common sense. What do you say to that?
I'm struggling to think that you're taking this any more seriously than as something that might generate clicks on YouTube, Piers.
Wow, you don't think that's serious?
Hold on, Piers, I can't even get a sentence out.
What, you don't think it's serious?
Hold on a second. The vast majority of those instances in the UN report are outside the United States and have nothing to do with the president or vice president of the United States at its face. And secondly, I would challenge you to tell me the quotes that Biden or Harris have put forward wherein they have weighed in on how sports leagues should be handling these decisions. But 92% of that study is not even in the U.S. So I don't even know why you're bringing this up other than
what's
to
that got to
generate
do with
clicks
the
on
principle
YouTube.
of the principle?
I'm sorry?
What's that got to do with the principle?
Well, the principle is you're saying Kamala Harris and Biden have come out in support of this.
They do. They support policies which actively protect. They support policies that protect transgender athletes performing in women's sport. And I think that is madness. You're saying, well, because most of these things in this UN report were outside of America, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
What I'm saying, it's a completely contrived issue that almost no one cares about in every single opinion poll.
Wow. You see, I think that's incredibly deluded. People do care about it. They care about the integrity of women's sport.
It just doesn't show up in any opinion poll as a primary issue. Not top 10, not top 20.
Out of interest, do you think...
They care about it, but it doesn't show up in a single poll.
What's your view? Do you think it's fair?
I think that it depends on the sport, and I think we need to talk about this for probably 90 minutes to really have a productive conversation.
Really? So when you saw the Paris Olympics and you saw 2 gold medal winners in women's boxing who actually were born with biological male chromosomes, you think that's right?
That is not the truth as far as I understand it.
Really?
I don't know who you're talking about. If you can name them, then maybe we can get into more detail.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. It was well publicized.
Well, tell me. Tell me who you're talking about.
I can't remember their exact names. There were 2 gold medal winners. Well, I can find them now if it helps you. I don't know why the names matter.
The one who was the source of a lot of viral articles was born a woman, always lived as a woman, and always competed as a woman. I'm sorry?
What was her name?
Imani something.
All right, so you don't know either. So don't be quite so patronizing if you don't know either. But the truth is...
Well, you're bringing it up, Piers. See, here's the thing. Hold on a second, Piers. Hold on a second. You do this all the time, Piers. You bring something up. And then you evaluate your guest's opinion as to how much it matters. You brought it up. If it doesn't actually matter, don't bring it up.
No, just to be clear, you were haranguing me for not remembering the name. I said the name's irrelevant. What's relevant is whether the gold medal winners have biological male chromosomes when they're getting into
My
a
understanding
boxing ring
is they do not.
and punching women in the face so hard that one of the women competitors, a female, quit after 45 seconds.
Yes,
because she'd
in
never
that
been hit that
instance,
hard.
there is nothing to the story that the boxer that prevailed was ever a man.
Wow.
Just nothing.
And yet you know
nothing.
that they...
There's no evidence
you
of
know
it.
That,
it was
you
a
know that
viral
boxer,
right-wing
well,
story based on nothing.
Hang on, you know that boxer was banned from the World Championships precisely because there is evidence. You know that, right?
Yes. Do you know the details of that, Piers? Do you know? Tell the full story. Go ahead. Tell the full story.
That boxer was banned, along with the other one, from the World Championships because it has been reported that they tested positive for male chromosomes, right? If you know better, tell me.
That's not the full... I do know better, and I will tell you. That was done by a Russian lab who had an interest in disqualifying her because it jeopardized the undefeated record of a Russian boxer. It's just, that's all they have, and it's totally debunked. Piers, I thought you were better than this,
It's not debunked, and you'll regret saying that because it's true. Let me go to Kevin. Kevin, I have a common sense test with this stuff. One of the things Trump is very good at, his instincts are very commonsensical. You can hate some of the rhetoric, and I do when he goes off sometimes at people. But what you can't deny is instincts for what average Americans are thinking. Normally pretty spot on. And he said recently, I think last week, he would ban all trans athletes from women's sport. Do you think it matters or not?
You know, I actually enjoyed that narrative you two just had, and I have a solution that I think you'll both agree with, and I think we could settle this issue forever. Globally,
I know what it's going to be.
We know almost 40 years ago that we started testing for doping, for example, and we exclude cyclists in Olympics that are doping, and we found other drugs that we exclude, tested by Olympic testers. So why don't we just settle this and create the transgender Olympics? So if you started in one gender and you switch to another, you join this third category and you go at it. And I think everybody would agree with that. And I think it'd make it very easy, and it's tested by DNA. And that would be it, because I also agree it's kind of unfair if you take a man and change him into a woman using today's technology and he pounds the crap out of somebody in a boxing ring, or she does. That's not fair. It just doesn't make common sense. And that goes through to this thing you're talking about with Trump. He's authentic. You know, I had this narrative with my daughter yesterday in New York, and we really were heated. And I said, do you agree that he has no filter? He just puts out what's on his mind, and you know with certainty that's what's on his mind. And she said, that I agree with. He has no filter, and he's authentic. Now, if you don't like that, don't vote for him. The people are going to decide. But I don't feel the same way about the other candidate. I respect VP Harris, but it seems to me she's trying to process every single sentence. And I'm a little worried about something. For me to get the actual data on her pricing policy, of which I have many investments in food services, I had to call Mark Cuban and ask him, you're obviously stumping for her. You're a shill for her. What the hell is she talking about? Should I be worried? And he said, no, you don't have to worry about it. This is a crazy policy. It'll never happen. Okay, well, that's not good. Why can't she say that herself? Or 28% taxes, or unrealized gains on capital? I got to call Cuban for the answer. Luckily, I know the guy. Maybe he should be the president.
Yeah, you know what? At least he probably had the answers. I mean, Bo, let me flip it around on you here. For your generation, what are the things that Donald Trump does or says which you don't agree with? I mean, when you're having an honest, frank discussion with him, do you tell him what he should steer clear of?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the vaccine stuff, I wasn't too fond of. Some of his more pro-choice stances I wasn't too fond of, because I'm very pro-life. I do think it's funny how the media paints him as someone who's too pro-life and on all these things, when I don't agree with a lot of his. He's pro-choice in many ways. So I think there's some things that my generation and myself definitely agree with. But I think most of all, you're 100% right when you said he hits on those things that we really care about. I don't know what David thinks he's saying when he says that no one cares about transgender athletes in sports. That could not be further from the truth. I was just talking to a UFC fighter last night, Colby Covington, and he said it's awful. It's brutal. We have men transitioning to women, and they're joining like UFC thing, not Dana White's UFC, but they're joining MMA in other leagues, and they're beating the crap out of biological women, and it's brutal. And I mean, I guess at a certain point, it's just what our country's going to allow to happen, and he's acting like it's had nothing to do with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and like they don't support it. But I mean, it was Kamala Harris's VP pick, Tim Walz, who was putting tampons in men's bathrooms, in boys' schools. So I think we know what they support and what side they're on. And I think that Trump has 100% done a more than phenomenal job showing us his policy, showing us what he cares about and what he's passionate about, and showing us that he's not going to let this stuff happen.
Marianne, two things for you. One, the clip we showed earlier of Joe Biden saying lock him up about Trump. I thought that was pretty ill-advised. He tried to scramble and say, I meant politically, but actually he said what he said, and we know what he meant. He does mean it. He would like to see Trump locked up. That's not going to help anyone in this race, is it?
No, of course it's not. It was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. But let's remember also, this man is a convicted felon, and he's yet to be sentenced. So on the issue of whether or not Biden should have said that, obviously he should not.
But
have.
he shouldn't be a convicted felon for the offence that they went after him for. I thought it was pathetic and embarrassing that the first American president to ever be dragged through a criminal court is dragged through a criminal court over shuffling a bit of paperwork over an alleged one-night stand with a porn star 18 years ago. That is just completely demeaning to America. And the fact that it was allowed to happen and encouraged and promoted by Democrats, I thought was, again, a stratospherically bad act of self-harm, because most average Americans are like, really? Really? You're going to try and put an American president, they've only been 45, 46, you're going to try and put him in prison for a one-night stand with a porn star 20 years ago? Have we gone nuts? And if you're going to start putting people in prison for that kind of thing, how's Bill Clinton still out there?
Well, I agree with you that it was an act of self-harm on the part of the Democrats. But the larger issue is not about that. The larger issue is about the things that he stands for now. There's been a lot of conversation over the last few minutes about the things that matter much more. I agree with Kevin. What Kevin was talking about, a transgender, for instance, Olympics, I agree with that, and I've been saying that for a while. I think there's an issue here about Trump's authenticity that people have spoken about. He is authentic, but sometimes he's authentically a jerk. And what the president
But
of the
that's what
United
happens when you're authentic, Marianne. I think that's the point Kevin is making. You can hate him for it. You can hate some of the stuff he says. And yes, he is a jerk sometimes. But he's a kind of honest jerk. He just blurts out what he thinks.
Yes. But the point is, if you're just going out for dinner with someone, you have a drink with somebody, and they're authentically a jerk, it can almost be amusing. What the words of the President of the United States says are important. But the larger issue here is Kamala Harris. We need some of that core passion coming from her. We need to hear, even on the transgender issue, sometimes people don't care what your policy issue is, but they want to hear your passion about it. Donald Trump talks to people about the things that are going on. For David Pakman to say, oh, Americans aren't thinking about the trans issue, I'm sorry, David, they're definitely thinking about it. And she, regardless of her beliefs about things, go out there and talk about your beliefs about things. Don't just say, I come from the middle class and I care for an opportunity economy. Talk to people about what's going on in their lives, about food. The day that Bobby Kennedy endorsed Donald Trump, the next day, the Democratic Party should have come out with a food security issue that would knock your socks off. When President Trump went to McDonald's, which was, I'm sorry, a brilliant move, the things that David said Trump should have said, no, Kamala should have said. Let's talk about what the real truth is about the economic conditions about people who work at McDonald's. She needs to get out the punch, and she needs to speak from her heart and from her passion, and that is how the Democrats will win.
Okay, Kevin, I want to ask you quickly about Elon Musk, because you mentioned Mark Cuban, who's been having an old ding-dong with Musk for quite a while now. Musk is now promising daily $1 million prizes to registered voters in battleground states who sign a petition which is produced by his Donald Trump supporting Political Action Committee. Let's take a little clip of Elon talking about this.
I have a surprise for you, which is that we're going to be awarding $1 million to randomly to people who have signed the petition every day from now until the election. One of the challenges we're having is how do we get people to know about this petition? Because the legacy media won't report on it. Not everyone's on X. So I figure, how do we get people to know about it? Well, this news, I think, is going to really fly.
I don't know about you, Kevin. I feel slightly uneasy about the world's richest man just chucking millions of dollars at people to register to vote. What did you think?
Well, again, for full transparency and disclosure, my son works at Tesla in California for Elon. And I've met him a few times. Just some background on this. I don't believe it to be illegal. What he's basically saying is, I want to motivate people to go out and vote. He's not telling them who to vote for. He just wants them to think about being part of the democratic process. Now, with certainty that Trump would like to get Elon Musk, should he win, into a role in the administration to seek efficiencies. And there are different kind of people in life that I've learned in investing in many managers and entrepreneurs and working for some of them. And I would say there's the idea of signal and noise. And so if you think, I worked for Steve Jobs, not a very nice guy, but he was 90% signal during the day and 10% noise. Noise being distractions that he would agree to be distracted by during the working day, and his working day was 20 hours. And he wasn't that social a guy, and look what he achieved. Now, Elon Musk, I know with certainty, is 100% signal. I've never met a man like that, and look what he's achieved. It's unprecedented, and he would be a profound force if set free to go work on government to find inefficiencies, and I'd like to see that happen. But he's, got social issues around being 100% signal. But do I think he should be involved with Trump? Does it make Trump a better administrator? Does it make his administration more powerful? 100%. We don't know how much Elon will be engaged, but you can't deny what this man's achieved. There's never been an entrepreneur like him.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, I mean, all of it is unbelievable. I listened to him. I met him in.
Well, I say release the hounds.
Yeah,
release the hounds. Release them onto the hill, and let's see what happens.
I think it could be absolutely fascinating. Bo, when Elon did Joe Rogan, he famously smoked a spliff, a marijuana spliff. Donald Trump famously has never had a drink, never had a drug. Is this a moment when he finally get to doobie out?
Well, that'd be interesting for sure. Might win him some voters, and that's another thing. Actually, Trump. I believe I might be wrong on this. I believe he's gonna say yes on a thing in Florida that's gonna legalize marijuana, which I personally don't agree with. But I think it's interesting, and I think young people are very interested in that too, of course. So that'd be very interesting for sure to see on Joe Rogan. But that Elon clip was pretty funny.
It was. I've got to leave it there. Great panel. Thank you all very much indeed. Appreciate it.